When the Beatles landed in America in the spring of 1964, millions of teenagers instantly wanted a piece of the band to keep. To meet that demand, manufacturers flooded the consumer market, rapidly stamping out cheap plastic goods as fast as the machines could cycle. Retailers stocked shelves with nylon stockings, itchy plastic wigs, and tin containers bearing their likeness. By the end of that first year, the sheer volume of this unregulated ephemera had generated an estimated $100 million in gross retail sales. This bar chart converts those 1964 figures to modern economic terms, showing a market size well over $500 million. Yet the four musicians who drove the largest cultural wave of the decade walked away from this massive retail footprint with virtually nothing. The band's manager, Brian Epstein, was a brilliant architect of music and stagecraft, but he was severely out of his depth when it came to retail licensing. He handed merchandising rights to a middleman called Celteb, agreeing to a disastrous split where Celteb kept 90%. Epstein's management then took a cut of the remaining 10%, leaving the band with fractions of pennies. John Lennon and George Harrison detested the arrangement. They routinely mocked the branded items during press conferences, genuinely baffled that their audience was paying real money for shoddy cash-ins. The nadir arrived with the 1965 ABC Saturday morning animated series, an unauthorized production flattening the group's attitude into harmless, pseudo-British slapstick. This unregulated licensing ecosystem proved doubly damaging. It drained their potential fortune while actively threatening the serious artistic credibility they were working to establish. The band's outlook shifted in 1968 after they agreed to appear in Yellow Submarine, merely to fulfill a leftover United Artists film contract. The resulting film abandoned slapstick for avant-garde, psychedelic imagery, proving to the band that their likeness could be commercialized without sacrificing their dignity. Driven by a demand for total autonomy over their art, they founded Apple Corps later that same year, specifically to wall off outside exploiters. This organizational chart represents the modern governance of Apple Corps, divided equally between Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and the Lennon and Harrison estates. They established unanimous veto power. If a single party casts a no vote on any proposed project, it immediately kills the deal. Apple Corps operates less like a traditional corporation and more like an impenetrable defensive structure built to guarantee the band never has to compromise again. The modern operation at Apple Corps is the exact inverse of 1964. The frantic output of cheap trinkets has been replaced by obsessive curation. The cheap, throwaway textures of the mid-60s are completely gone, swapped for permanent, premium materials meant to last. Today's releases take the form of authorized high-end instrument reissues, immersive spatial audio mixes, and audiophile box sets sourced directly from the original session tapes. Their visual iconography receives the same treatment, elevated into limited edition fine art and meticulously detailed collectibles. McCartney and Starr view this approach as preservation. By treating the merchandise as high-end artifacts, they ensure the band's aesthetic commands respect from generations who weren't alive to see them play. In April 2028, the band's story returns to theaters when director Sam Mendes releases 4 interconnected biographical films, one for each member in a single month. Dropping 4 major studio films focused on a single group creates a logistical puzzle, triggering massive global merchandising demands across multiple demographics all at once. To handle this, Apple Corps recently signed a worldwide exclusive pact with Universal Music Group. The agreement consolidates their master recordings, global film licensing, physical apparel, and worldwide e-commerce into a single unified supply chain. It is the ultimate course correction. They are locking down their global infrastructure now to guarantee absolute control over the presentation and profits of their largest cultural moment in 6 decades. That infrastructure also supplies their physical legacy. Apple Corps repurchased their historic headquarters at 3 Savile Row, converting the 7-story building into an official museum. Visitors will explore recreations of their basement studios and, for the first time, step onto the exact roof where the 4 of them played their final public concert in January 1969. While heritage peers like Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen have sold their entire life's work to corporate investment funds for massive lump sums, the Beatles took a different path. The surviving members and the 2 estates maintain total ownership of the company. They partner with distributors, but they dictate the terms. 60 years after surrendering their image to a shell company with a backwards name, they have meticulously built the most sophisticated, self-owned intellectual property operation in the entertainment industry. In April 2028, Sony Pictures is launching an unprecedented theatrical event. Director Sam Mendes is delivering 4 interconnected feature films, one for each Beatle, and releasing all 4 in a single month. No major studio has ever attempted to film 4 music biopics for a single band simultaneously, let alone releasing them all within a 30-day window. This announcement explains the hidden business maneuver that came just before it. Apple Corps signed an exclusive global pact with Universal Music Group. This agreement merges film rights, master audio recordings, and physical retail streams under one unified UMG umbrella. This unification is necessary because Universal must now coordinate merchandise for 4 distinct age groups simultaneously: high-end archival sets for boomers, audiophile reissues for Gen X, premium fashion for millennials, and a new wave of cinematic apparel for Gen Z and Alpha. By centralizing these operations, the band's estates are building a bulletproof supply chain in anticipation of the massive wave of attention these films will generate. This isn't a routine corporate merger. It is a calculated defensive move designed to ensure they never repeat a specific $100 million disaster from their early career. In 1964, manager Brian Epstein was a genius at music promotion, but he possessed a fatal blind spot for retail licensing. He was brilliant at the music, but the world of mass-market manufacturing was outside his expertise. As the British invasion began, Epstein handed complete control of the band's retail merchandise to an acquaintance. That acquaintance set up a third-party company called Celteb, which is just Beatles spelled backward. The financial structure was predatory. Celteb took 90% of the profits. The Beatles split the remaining 10%, and after their management took a further slice of that, the musicians were left with crumbs. The scale of the lost revenue was staggering. By the end of 1964, hundreds of licensed products moved an estimated $50 to $100 million in gross retail sales, wealth the band essentially never saw. The market was flooded with cheap disposable items. Manufacturers churned out low-quality plastic buttons, keychains, and even packets of supposed Beatles hair for a frantic teenage market. The band hated it. They particularly detested the 1965 Saturday morning cartoon, which flattened their music and rebellion into slapstick caricatures designed to sell cereal between commercials. This 1964 explosion demonstrated the massive profitability of band merchandise to the rest of the world, even as the Beatles themselves saw only fractions of the wealth they were generating, while losing control of their own likenesses. The shift occurred in 1968 with the animated film Yellow Submarine, a project the band only agreed to in order to satisfy a movie contract. Instead of another cheap cash-in, the film delivered a high-quality, avant-garde aesthetic. It proved to the band that their likeness could be used to create actual art rather than just shoddy plastic junk. This realization led directly to the founding of Apple Corps that same year. The mission was total artistic and financial autonomy, a place where they could work without answering to a middleman. They established a strict corporate structure that remains today: unanimous veto power. Paul, Ringo, and the Lennon and Harrison estates each hold a vote, and a single no kills any project. This 1968 pivot established the rule that finally reversed their fortunes: no more middlemen and absolute control over anything carrying the Beatles' name. Today, the Apple Corps philosophy is the exact inverse of the 1964 rush. Every project is curated to a premium archival standard. The first piece of the new universal infrastructure arrives in 2027, when Apple Corps opens an official museum at their historic London headquarters on Savile Row. Visitors will walk through 7 floors of archives, eventually reaching the actual roof where the band played their final public concert in January 1969. The ground floor will serve as a global retail flagship, selling location-exclusive merchandise through the Universal Partnership. By establishing Ambus' physical landmark, the band is locking down their premium ecosystem and organizing the global market just before the 2028 films arrive. This strategy stands in contrast to the industry. Many heritage rock acts are selling their master catalogs to investment funds for enormous lump sums. Apple Corps has chosen the opposite path. They remain strictly independent, only partnering with corporations on their own terms rather than selling out their rights. The surviving members and families still drive this philosophy. The teenagers who were stripped of a fortune in the 60s have been replaced by 2 bandmates and 2 families who hold absolute authority. Because they refused the lump sum buyouts accepted by their peers, Apple Corps remains one of the only entities in music where the artists still exercise daily control over their entire global commercial footprint. The 2028 cinematic event marks the close of a 62-year loop. The band moved from being exploited by a middleman with a backwards company name to running a private enterprise entirely on their own terms.